we are going to talk about doo-wop for week 10. So doo-wop is a subgenre, I would say, of rhythm and blues music developed in the 1940s by African-American youth, mainly in large cities. It mainly came out of folks not having instruments, okay? Again, think back to a time when a guitar may have cost more than, a poor family could afford, or a bass would have cost more than a poor family could afford. So what do you do instead of a bass? You find someone with a deep voice who can sing, ba-dum-ba-dum-bum, right? And they provide the bass. So usually these groups it would usually be 4 to 6 people would all sing together in group harmony. And that means they were all singing different notes and creating chords with just their voices. Sometimes as the groups became more solidified, they would get guitars and things. But for the most part, it was based on vocals. So it had a catchy melodic line, a simple beat, little or no instruments, which we call instrumentation. The lyrics were often simple, about love, and ornamented with nonsense syllables like ba-dum-ba-dum-bum or a-wee-moa, shoo-boo-ba-dee-boo, right? Lyrics that in the background lyrics they're nonsense syllables. They don't make a lot of sense. And the melody would be actual lyrics. It gained popularity in the 50s, and it enjoyed its peak success in the early 60s because, remember, rock and roll kind of went, and then doo-wop was like, whoop, and became a lot more, not famous, that's not the word, more popular. It's early when I'm recording this, I apologize. All right, so while doo-wop originally was formed in the Black community, it appealed to a lot of white listeners who did not like rock and roll because of its suggestive lyrics, screaming fans, improper dance moves, right? The Elvis shaking his hips, the Jerry Lee Lewis banging on the piano, right? Many of the doo-wop singers were Black, but the genre was shared by both white and Black artists. We also begin to see musical groups that are integrated, meaning they had members of the group that were both Black and white, and they sang together, which, again, up to this point was not really much of a thing. Many doo-wop groups started in high schools and on street corners. Many of the singers were in their young teens when the groups formed, and it often led them to make bad business decisions in the music industry because they were just kids, y'all's age, and they didn't know what they were getting into with the record companies. So again, doo-wop was viewed as a safer alternative. It was sweeter. Especially the male groups would be in nice suits, clean-cut hair. They would just sing and sway and snap their fingers and sing about love. It was much, much safer. And a lot of the parents of the young teenagers enjoyed their kids listening to doo-wop way more than when rock and roll was the craze. Sadly, they would be, that would not last for long, but we'll get to that. So doo-wop songs often use the chord progression 1-6-4-5, which was so influential that it is sometimes referred to as the 50s progression. What that means, those Roman numerals, it's the number of the chord in the key. So like a 1 chord is the root chord. The 6 is the chord built on la, like do, re, mi, fa, sol, la. That did not sound very good. You can tell I just woke up. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la. The chord built on la. Then the 4 chord, do, re, mi, fa, and then up to sol, and then back to do. Now, you don't need to memorize that. You just need to know that this chord progression was in like everything, and it was called the 50s progression. This characteristic harmonic layout was combined with the AABA chorus form. Now, what that is, again, you don't need to know the specifics, but AABA is a very common form used in almost every pop and rock song you can think of for the most part. A very common example of this is the song Firework by Katy Perry. Hopefully you all know that one, right? Starts off with the verse. Do you ever feel like a plastic bag? Whatever. Then it gets to the chorus. Baby, you're a firework. Shoot across the sky. Then it goes back. The next A. Ba-na-na-na-na. Ba-na-na-na-na. Then it goes to the chorus again. Baby, you're a firework, right? But then the B section is the boom, boom, boom. Even brighter than the moon, moon, moon. It's different, right, than everything else. But then what does it go back to for the last A? Cause baby, you're a firework. Ba-da-da-da-da-da. Make him go. Right? So it follows this very predictable form. We call that form in music. It's like the roadmap of the song. So doo-wop followed that roadmap, the AABA, but it also used the chords of the 1-6-4-5. And you throw that in there with some lyrics about love and boom, and you got a doo-wop hit on your hands. Okay, that's kind of the recipe for the whole thing. That form was also very typical in Tin Pan Alley pop music and is still to this day a very common thing. It also got much of its vocal harmony inspiration from the barbershop quartet style. So maybe you guys have seen a barbershop quartet before. Doo-wop is very similar. Often they're confused with one another, and there is a lot of overlap in that Venn diagram. All right, so the Chord's 1954 hit Shaboom is considered to have been the first rhythm and blues record to break the top 10 on the Billboard pop charts, reaching number 9. Okay, so again, this is 1954. So rock and roll is still the thing in 1954. So this, and again, these things don't all happen in chronological, like perfect order. So the Chords hit Shaboom and doo-wop was during the rock and roll thing. Okay, so, but the peak of doo-wop in general was in the early 60s. So this was sort of the first big one to make a splash. And again, the Chords were a black group, but it was considered a rhythm and blues record because the artists were black in the Chords group. It broke onto the top 10, reaching number 9 on the white pop charts. Again, this was like unheard of at the time. A few months later, a white group from Canada called the Crew Cuts released their version of the song, and that made it to number 1. So again, that shows you that, at the time, segregation and racism was still alive and well. A group from Canada came along, ripped off the song. I bet you the Chords didn't see any of that money, and their version hit number 1. The song wouldn't be classified as rhythm and blues by song type, but it was still called rhythm and blues at the time because the singers were black. Okay, now we would call it doo-wop. We wouldn't call it rhythm and blues necessarily, even though it came out of that tradition. So quickly, other R&B vocal groups entered the pop charts, particularly in 1955, and then in the early 60s, doo-wop became the norm after rock and roll faded away for a brief time. So doo-wop groups of young Italian-American men who, like their black counterparts, lived in rough neighborhoods in the Bronx and Brooklyn, learned their basic musical craft singing in churches and would gain experience in the new style by singing on street corners. Oftentimes, a doo-wop group would just go to a neighborhood, maybe the next door neighborhood, that city block, and they would start singing, and then people would start to show up to listen. Another group might come, and they would have like a friendly showdown on who could sing the best or gather the biggest crowd. By the late 50s and early 60s, many Italian-American groups had national hits. Female doo-wop singers were unusual in the early days. Doo-wop would go on to influence rock, pop, and soul and countless other genres moving into the 60s. There are lots of reasons that female doo-wop singers were unusual. One, the vocal range of doo-wop, you usually need that bass sound, and the female voice typically cannot achieve those low notes. Again, it also kind of came out of that barbershop quartet tradition, which was going to be made up of men. So you don't see a lot of female doo-wop. Sometimes you'll see a group that's like made up with men and they have a female who like sings the melodic line, but not very often, and none of the ones that are on this quiz. I might look into that because I'm curious now. But anyway. All right, so here are our groups that you need to be able to recognize. Again, you're going to go over to the Rock website, which is this. Go to Doo-wop, Wall of Sound tab up here in the middle, and here are all your groups so you know their names. And you're going to go in, open with Cami. Here, I'll click back on there. Open with, at the top, annotate with Cami, okay? I'm going to open it just to show you here. It's going slow. Loving it. Any minute now. Cammying will commence. Okay. So you open the document. And again, if this doesn't show up, try restarting your computer. If that doesn't work, you're just going to have to do a separate document. You go over to the left to text box. Okay. You scroll down like this group. The first one is Danny and the Juniors. Okay. Oh my gosh, it will not load. I'm not giving up. I refuse to relent. Okay, Danny and the Juniors. We go to text box. You double click. It makes this blue text box. You're going to stretch it out. Danny and juniors, and then click away, and then it's saved on there, okay? Do that for all of the who dats. Come down to vocabulary, do the same thing. We've got 6 terms here. Sorry, this one is handwritten. Also, I don't think falsetto is on this paper, so you might have to Google that one. But essentially, falsetto is the high register of the male voice. Okay, so again, you'll make a text box. High head voice, register of the male voice. Now, you might think like, oh, I don't know what that is, but you've heard it before. My favorite example is that song from a couple years ago by Jason Derulo. It's like, girl, you're the one I want to want me. And if I say, girl, you got me, there's nothing I wouldn't do. Right there, that is falsetto. Okay? The Frank Ocean song, the thinking about you. Not that part, but there's another part of the song where he's singing up really high, right? That is falsetto. I am not a man, and I also, it is also 9 a.m, so I cannot sing that high right now. But if you go back and listen to that Jason Derulo song, I forget the notes, like Wanna Want Me or whatever, or that Frank Ocean song from playlist number week 9, you can hear what I mean by falsetto, but you're also going to hear it in these examples. Those are the 2 I just listed are more modern examples of falsetto. But when you come down here to The Lion Sleeps Tonight or these other songs, you're going to hear that falsetto. Okay, so you're going to use Cami, type in your definitions. I'm going to delete these because I want to leave this clean. Okay, then you're going to go to your Jots. Again, you can use the website if you would like. The YouTube videos are here, but Spotify will give you better quality and use less bandwidth on your home internet, okay? So you're going to label all your stuff. You're going to go through to your listening Jots. Remember, do not just put, it's nice, it's weird. That's not what I want. I want, oh, I hear the bass voice harmony that begins and it builds a chord from the bottom up, or the melody is in a falsetto, high-pitched voice, but there's a bass line going, bum, 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 right? Like, type me details. I hear no instruments. I hear drums. I hear guitar. Whatever. Give me more than, it's weird. Okay? That no longer suffices as an answer. That's driving me crazy. And remember, just because something is new to you doesn't mean it's weird. It's just different. Okay? All right. So please do those. Submit. Once you finish typing everything in, I believe you have to hit save. And then it should have a submit button. I don't have a submit button because I am not in Google Classroom right now, but you will have a submit button and then you submit it. Okay, if you have any questions, please email me. I'll catch you later. Bye.